Russell Wilson has been traded to the Denver Broncos. Tom Pelissero reports that there is a deal in principle to send 9-time Pro Bowl quarterback Russell Wilson to the Denver Broncos. In exchange for...
All right, back now with you on Total Access with breaking news out of Green Bay. We go straight to Tom Pelissero on the details of what's going on with Davante Adams, who looks like the Raiders are acquiring him from the Packers. All right.
Hello and welcome to the Wild Wild West podcast. My name is RichiRichEh of the MHRT Network. And John, we appreciate your concern, but we are all alive and well and here ready to rock for you this evening. Over to my right or left, depending on which way you are facing your screen, is Captain Jack Rackham of the Captain Jack Rackham YouTube channel. He is, in fact, the Raiders Pirate, although I do prefer the other name, the Salty Pirate, but whichever one.
He is a captain.
Yeah.
He's earned that rank.
Yeah. But I appreciate Captain joining us here tonight. Directly below is Alex Gibbons of Airhead Addict, otherwise known as Mr. Smug. I have not seen any of the other Smug family join us this evening, but I do hope they do join us. It is always wonderful to have them here in the chat and contributing to the show.
They're always there. They're always there.
That's great. And directly diagonal, I even almost got the point right, is Coach Defense of the Lockdown Defense podcast. Coach, lovely to have you. And, of course, as always, I joined you and Kurt yesterday for your Tuesday show. How are we all doing, gentlemen?
Well, doing well. Ready to talk football.
Not Lakers.
No Lakers stuff. No.
Well, thank goodness.
That's why I said football.
Thank goodness.
I'm still. Listen, it's too soon. I'm still hurting.
Okay.
I know.
Do you have like an RIP LeBron or anything?
And AD and D'Angelo.
Yeah.
Well, today.
How your three biggest stars don't play against OKC of all people? That is befuddling to me. But whatever.
That's why we're here to talk football, baby.
There you go.
Wait, we need time for the playoffs. Otherwise,
So I think this is in.
Sure. I'm good for hot dogs. When are we eating?
He'll bring the dogs. You bring the buns, right?
Yeah, I got the buns.
Well, all right.
And right into it tonight, aren't we? Okay, fantastic.
The Dead Capt Hot Bun Challenge on OnlyFans. Live stream.
Go.
Oh, jeez.
He's like a hot bun.
Brought him back. He's back.
Jesus.
There's a few questions that needed to be asked. That was a subtle Ace Ventura reference for those that missed it.
Yes, indeed. I still don't look at hamburger buns the same anymore.
And here's your second reference.
There you go.
There you go.
Fantastic.
That the Buddy Jesus reference.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You gotta have the proper movie references, otherwise it wouldn't be a show for this evening. We got an interesting show for you today. We got a couple different topics stacked up. One of them is, now that pretty much all of our teams have kind of rounded out their coaching rosters, we want to delve into a little bit of those coaches, what we think they mean for each of our teams, and more importantly, what we think that might do to impact our individual teams' drafts, because obviously we're coming right up to the combine, and then you end up with the individual teams and their combines, and you're going to start getting right into all these people speculating on whether or not some guy running in shorts makes a difference over his game film.
Oh, it does.
Oh yeah, for sure. And so it'll be really, really interesting to see what happens as a result of our coaches, because I do think that the coaches and the styles they want to implement have a huge impact on who you're going to draft. So we've all made a few changes here and there. Some of us have some pretty glaring opening voids on their team, which will be really interesting to kind of see where all that fits. To start things off, we are going to throw over to Coach to talk about the Chargers, your coaching changes, their coach, and what you think that might have in terms of an impact on your team. And also, just because it's somewhat relevant, is your team's former coordinator is now the Broncos' current coordinator. So we have some overlap within the division to perhaps talk about, you and I, with regards to these coaching changes. So
well, we know how Coach feels about him. So.
I know how I feel.
Yeah, you know how Chargers feel.
Yes, Captain.
You met one, Rich, and I was going to say I'm glad that you did, because now I have something to say. Aha! You missed one. We'll get.
I had to drink beer. I may well have. I've had quite the week at work. I'm not going to lie. So
it's Wednesday.
It is right. Wednesday, and it feels like a Friday already for me.
There you go.
Yeah. So Coach, over to you. Jumping right into the Chargers coaching roster at this point. Some of your thoughts and all those sorts of things.
Well, we had a firing of Joe Lombardi, cheers and citations and shots are galore. First rounds on me at the bar, because Joe Lombardi's no longer bros in the building.
Woo!
So we've had a jettison of Joe Lombardi from our staff, too much to the delight of Chargers Nation. The whole entire fan base, the whole Bull fam was happy about that. I don't think
Chargers Nation. I knew it was something. There's only one nation.
Listen.
It's Chiefs Nation.
There's only one nation, baby, and that's Raider Nation.
Okay. Okay, settle down.
Say it again.
We're only 8 minutes in. Calm down. You give yourself a coronary. Calm down. Anyhow, the whole entire Bolt fam was saluting the idea that Joe Lombardi was gone. So, in short order after Lombardi was gone, we got a blessing in Kellen Moore negotiating his release from Dallas. So he's now the offensive coordinator, and they didn't even blink an eye when it came down to getting him. They interviewed a few guys, a couple of coordinators, and I guess you can say position coaches that were quote unquote, projects in the sense, they having the offensive coordinator position experience. So we're all lukewarm on those guys. So when Kellen Moore came available, like I said, the Chargers didn't bat an eye. They definitely jumped on that bandwagon quick, fast, in a hurry, and I'm happy about it. It's funny that I read a quote today about what Mark McCarthy had to say about Kellen Moore, and he really feels like, much how Eric Bieniemy and Andy Reid had their relationship. He felt like they had a similar one where he felt like he has grown a lot. He has much to give to an offense that he can ultimately call plays and be his own man in a sense when it comes down to the team that he's coaching. So, he really was hoping that he can spread his wings and get the most out of this Chargers offense he possibly can. Here's a funny little quote he said about his desires, that he wants to, score as many points as he can. He wants to throw it all over the yard. He wants to do all these grandiose things, much like an offensive guy would. An offensive-minded guy wants to score points and put a lot of yards up and be the number one offense in the league and this and the third. So that's positive, and that's encouraging to see that he is definitely not one of those guys who wants to be stuck in the mud when it comes to offensive production. So that's encouraging. Our defensive coordinator, he moved on. So I guess you can say that in another vein, he wanted to be his own man in a sense, to be the defensive play caller. So he left, and we promoted within the ranks, and Derek Ansley is actually the defensive coordinator now. So but again, it's the name only in my opinion, and system only, because I think Staley's still calling defensive plays. So that's I want to say it's a cosmetic change, but it is a change. So so we got that going up for us. So our linebacker coach, we changed our linebackers coach. It was something that I forgot to bring up a while ago. It happened, I think, mid-season, that we brought in Pat White. Have you guys remember Pat White from West Virginia, the quarterback?
UD?
Yeah.
He's a baller.
Yeah, he's on our staff now.
Oh.
Yeah, he's an offensive assistant on our staff now. So Pat White is in-house. He signed middle of last year. So we got Pat White. So a couple of guys who names you probably wouldn't even recognize, that, again, they kind of shuffle it around a little bit. Another glaring thing that Chargers Twitter was a buzz about is the fact that the Chargers fired their or parted ways, let me say, I'm not going to say fired, but parted ways with their head trainer of the last 12 years.
He did get a pretty bad grading in the report that came out today.
Right. So...
Well, bros, that's your cue for, and there was much rejoicing because, I mean, my gosh, aside from the Broncos, the Chargers are right up there in terms of one of the most injured teams, right? So,
yeah, and I'll go back and forth about the whole idea and the aspect of whether or not that's the trainer's fault, or it's just the type of player that you bring in. Like, it's not so much I can do for you to strengthen your body, right? If you have weak density, bone density, you're just injury prone, you're just not cut out for the rigors of a physical NFL game, then that's just it. Like, there's not much you can do. Not many guys there, that are just flat out durable and can withstand much of anything, without painkillers and this and the third. I know y'all saw the post about Byron Jones have to retire after 6 years of playing because he can't run or jump anymore, and all the painkillers and injections he took rather than getting surgery like he should have, cost him, like the back end of his career. So, again, you have to, take it with a grain of salt and say that the trainer is helpful, but he's not the end all be all when it comes to the cause of having injuries, in a sense. Some people even blame our turf in our field here lately, the reason why our injuries have been so high. The turf isn't giving and isn't soft as it should be. Why Odell ripped his ACL up in the Super Bowl. Why JC ripped his patella tendon in a game in the midseason. So,
well, there is some stats and data to support artificial turf having a greater impact on injury. So, I mean, I actually, as much as I'd like to dismiss that outright and say no, I mean, you can't. You can't argue with the actual data and the stats on that, and there is some kind of data to back that up.
Yeah, and then you get the goofy post I saw right before the show is that the head groundsman for the Super Bowl said the field was overwatered. The reason why it was so slippery. Like, how do you overwater a field before the Super Bowl? Like, who does that?
Why didn't just put it in there? Son.
Right.
He didn't sand it right. I was like, what?
It's ridiculous. So I'm just like, come on now. But
it had nothing to do with the fact that they literally painted the entire field, right?
They painted the entire field and they wanted it. So
it's because the Chiefs gave him $10 million to do that. I mean,
is that what that was?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So
there it is.
I mean, but in regards to the coach staff overall, like, I'm excited about Kellen Moore's addition. I think that's definitely a win for us. The internal promotions, they've been in the system, they've been in the house, so it shouldn't be a negative. Like, it shouldn't be anything but more than a push or a positive. So that doesn't have me in angst. So overall, I would say the overall season grade I would give them for hiring. I give them on offense, I'll give them a B-, and I would give the defense a C. Just because I think it's still ultimately the play calling and the production of the defense the last 2 years has been on Staley. Regardless of who he has under him. So, and until that gets better and those numbers get better from a deep perspective, I'm not going to give them a high grade or give them a pass for being lackluster. So, overall, I mean, I'm okay with what we've done in the draft. Now, what I'm not okay with is these pressures that be going on. So I definitely got something to say about that in short order after we talk about the coaches, because with Tom Telesco and Brandon Staley had things to say in the presser in certain regards in the combine here the last week or so, kind of give me a little bit of a pause, to say the least. So yeah, I definitely want to talk about that. So that's the only thing that really gives me cause for concern when it comes to what free agency is going to look like and what the draft is going to look like. But from a play calling and a coaching standpoint, I think we're in good shape.
I have a question with regards to what you said earlier about Kellen Moore, just generally speaking. Do you think that McCarthy was holding him back, or because I think it's a rather curious statement to make that McCarthy made, right? It's like he finally gets to flourish on his own. It's like, well, wait a minute. Does that mean you were basically pulling him into the back room as you guys were drawing up the offense and saying no to a lot of things? Because then all of a sudden now Dallas's ebbs and flows, ups and downs, and all that kind of stuff. Now you're saying, okay, well, hang on a bit. Like, was that Kellen Moore's issue, or was that a Moore play or a McCarthy play?
Well,
what are your thoughts on that? Right?
I think it was definitely McCarthy, because he even said in the same quote that he said that he, as a head coach, would much more rather run the ball more so and save the defense from being tired, in a sense, because if you score quickly in the passing game, the defense is right back on the field, so they tend to wear down and get tired towards the end of the game. So as overall, I guess you can say game manager, his philosophy is run the ball, slow the pace down, and eat up clock versus them being high powered from an offensive perspective. So I think that particular aspect of it he had to rein in Kellen in the sense of how he wanted to address the game plan, how he wanted to call plays in short order. So again, I think we could also ultimately answer that question when Dallas rolls out their offense this year, because McCarthy's going to be one calling the plays. And how the Chargers fare differently. So I think that'll tell you exactly who was holding who back. But I believe you, and I think that he definitely was holding holding the reins back on Kellen Moore, for him opening up the playbook and do the things he really wanted to do.
Right, but so again, let's add on to that, because I'm actually really curious, and I'll just kind of maybe lay the cards on the table. You have a couple of very good running backs on the Chargers offensive roster, and so one of the potential selling points, which I even think last show, if I'm not mistaken, last week even, you were mentioning that, with Kellen Moore potentially coming in, Austin Eckler, another promising back. Yeah, like you got some legit running backs on your roster. But now I think if that's truly what McCarthy or the general census that's come out of, or even consensus that's come out of that building is, then that would mean potentially that Moore isn't going to even utilize the backs that, maybe, I'm not saying for sure, but maybe not utilize the backs as perhaps a McCarthy might want to utilize them, which would be leverage the backs to really wear down and get those, real good yards, the yards that really kind of wear down the opposing defense, stretch out the play, get those 6 and 7 minute drives that you're wanting to try to get. Basically the types of drives that Dallas has been known for the last several years. And if Kellen Moore is not that guy, then you're going to potentially see almost, I'm not saying for sure, but maybe a little bit of a repeat of a Lombardi style offense where you didn't see your running backs get used to their full potential.
Well, he didn't use the running backs at all. Let's put that out there.
Kellen Moore used them like passing, like kind of like Andy Reid,
Right.
They're Pollard.
Yeah, their short pass game is their run game, in a sense. That's typically how they were used. Now, granted, when you had to go to it, Andy used it, and he used it in the Super Bowl, which nobody was expecting. So, to have it and to have it in your bag and still be able to be productive and throw the ball how you want to throw the ball when it's available to you, that's you got to look at it from that perspective as well. I think that he wants to throw it more, and I think that, to be honest with you, I think the Chargers are at a crossroads. Like it's a situation where, yes, you had 3 good running backs, right? But you also have to understand that you need to get Justin Herbert on track. Like, he needs to be, based upon the circumstances he's in. He's in year 4. So, you need to be able to maximize his potential and get him, ready to be that guy, for going forward, because that deal is looming. Whether they get it done this all season or next, that deal is looming. So you have to, understand that it should be his offense going forward. Yes, you can have a running game and be a balanced offense, like I've been preaching. Be a balanced offense that you can go to the run when it's needed, when you need to close out games and things of that nature, and run timely throughout the game, so the defense can have to focus on it and pay attention to it. Because it's much different when you go into the game knowing, like, take the Buffalo Bills for instance. Buffalo Bills has never been a good running team, which is ironic and ridiculous, because you're a cold weather team. How the hell you don't run the ball well? That should be your calling card, because you're going to face games where you're going to have to be forced to run the ball. There's nothing you can do about it. You're going to have to run the ball at a high clip, because it's going to be snowing, it's going to be raining, it's going to be windy. That game they had with Patriots 2 years ago, that nor'easter. I mean, they literally couldn't throw the ball past 5 yards without it, cut and win. So you have to be able to do that. So to have the
kind of weather right there.
Yeah, to have it in your back pocket to say I can utilize it and run the ball effectively when you have it, when you allowed to do that from a scheme perspective, then that's one thing. But I think the primary focus is going to be throwing the ball.
Better than passing gas. I'll just say that.
What's that? Cut and win versus passing gas? Is that what you said?
Passing gas.
Oh Jesus. So yeah, I think that Kellen should probably be more focused on the pass game and the nuances of that. But I do believe he's gonna implement a style and a running style that's gonna be effective. And I think that if you don't burn out Eckler and Kelly and things of that nature, because you gotta look at it like this, Eckler is a very
They're going to go sign Fournette, man. I'm telling you.
No, we're not doing that.
That. You got Sony Michel. Just add to it.
No, that was Lombardi. I'm going to put that on Lombardi's. Yeah, that was Lombardi's decision. I'm going to put it on him. We're not doing that again. We're not picking up 4 running backs and don't use none of them. That was just stupid. You should have picked up a receiver. So I would say that he's going to be able to. You have 3 running backs already on the roster that's under contract and it's cheap. So I think that you should definitely, use them as a committee. Don't burn out one or the other. And like I said, Eckler and even Kelly now has been more apt in the passing game. He's definitely improved that in his game. So I think utilize those 2 out the backfield and much like Kelly did with what Kellen did with Pollard. I think that's going to be an added bonus to offense. So I like what they're doing. But yet again, I think that the biggest issue is receiver. I think you need to add speed to the receiver room, and until you do that, then we're still going to have an offense that's going to be limited, and it's easy to defense I guess you can say an offense that can't run past you, from a secondary perspective. If they can't take your top off your defense and make you honor deep balls, then you're always going to be played a certain way. So I think that once you do that, then I think it's wide open and we can do anything we want to do on offense.
I agree. I think the other thing that you need to find is another reliable and durable wide receiver today.
Oh, I agree. I totally agree.
Like today.
Yeah, I'm not going to steal a thunder of it, because that's going to come into the play about my talk about the pressers.
Yeah.
I'm going to address that.
I'll just kind of leave that there because I think you have some veteran presence on your team, and all the good teams that are out there, the best teams at the NFL, the ones that have consistently and perennially been in the top tiers of the league, have churn people that they bring in. Now, the Chiefs did that this year after they won the Super Bowl by bringing in a bunch of veterans that were all cut from their teams on, reasonable team-friendly deals. So they had a stable of wide receivers at that position to select from. And they also got some extraordinary production out of their rookie running back in Pacheco.
They did.
I mean, I don't care who you are. I don't care what Chiefs you're fan you. I don't care what level of fandom you are. You do not expect that from that much production that quickly from a running back taken that low in the draft.
Seventh round.
Yeah, you just say, sweet. Right, and
they always do that, though. I mean, Jamal Charles was a 3rd round pick. I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire is the only guy they early draft cap on, and
look what happened to him.
Yeah, right.
Right, who?
Yeah, exactly. Right. He'll be on the Falcon or somewhere. He'll be in Carolina.
Yeah,
right.
This next season.
Yes, so that would really be my only comment. But again, that's what the coaches are there for, is to try to help the young guys that they're going to eventually bring them up. But then you also want to see some of the veteran players on your team that are I mean, some of these guys have to know that they're not going to be able to play for that much longer. And so these veteran players that are in the back 9 of their career or have 1 foot in the 19th hole and only 1 foot back on the green have to know that the guy that comes in now is going to be the one that they're going to be known for in terms of how well they do in their career. So it's in their interest as a player. I'm thinking your guys like Keenan Allen and that sort of guy, those types of guys, to say, if I can train up a new guy that's coming in this draft, and I might only have 2 more years left in the league, period, just based on potential injuries and whatnot. I'm not saying he's not good enough. I'm just saying that at some point your body betrays you.
Yeah, you just don't know if he'll do that. It's not my job, you know?
Yeah, like at some point your body betrays you, right? Like you just can't do some of the same things, or like what you said about Byron Jones there, your body just can't sustain those types of hits and that kind of stuff anymore. So training up the young guy behind you is part of what leaves you as a legacy as a player.
Yeah, it's 2 things to point out there too, Richie, to add some nuance to what you just said, is because you also have to realize that who you bring in right now is going to be tied to Justin Herbert for the next 4 to 5 years, especially if you draft him in the first round. So you're looking at a long-term deal, and Keenan Allen, although he loves Keenan Allen, and that's his guy, him and Mike Williams, he's not going to be tied to them his whole career. He's going to be tied more so to the young guys. So he's going to have to build relationships and get things going with it and build some synergy with the young guys now that you bring in now, that you draft now versus, Keenan Allen. Because like you said, he's on the back 9 of his career and Mike Williams is in the late 20s. So you would definitely look at it from a perspective that anybody that's young and up and coming, next 2 years you draft.
Someone over here.
Right.
Yeah.
In the next 2 years, next 2-3 years, you want to build those relationships and why they're cheap. You want to get him a lockstep receiver like Jamal, like Joe Burrow has with Jamar Chase and things of that nature. Those type of relationships. So if you can do that, then yeah, that's definitely something you should do now. And to your point as well, if Keenan Allen can be a mentor to him while he's there and help him, because he's helped Josh Palmer. He's helped Josh Palmer out. Josh Palmer has picked his brain and they've been working really well together. He's trying to progress him as a receiver. So I think he'll do that for any other receiver that comes to the door. So yeah, so do it now and don't wait. Because again, you're going to need cheap talent, here coming in the next 3 years in order to be able to be competitive.
Competitive. Yeah, 100%. So I think you guys have done some really interesting things for your coaching staff. I think that there's been some, certainly, I think some upgrades given what you're expecting from your coaches from an offensive and defensive perspective. Staley's obviously got a bunch of experience working under Fangio and some other defensive, ultimately folks that are just seen as absolutely elite defensive minds at the NFL level. So I think that's a good thing for you guys. I'm going to move over to the Broncos because I really think we've had some of the biggest changes, if you will, at the coaching staff, where most of our staff was almost completely gutted from last year to this year, which given our record is probably not always a bad thing. But there were certainly some changes that were unexpected, in my opinion. One of them was Aviro Evero basically asking to leave and leaving, despite the fact that, by and large, he clearly fielded a pretty spectacular defense last year and did show that he is more than capable, despite being a first-year defensive coordinator, as the role not being anywhere too big for him. He was a real pleasant surprise from my perspective, and he's now no longer with the Broncos. Just to kind of go over our key coordinator positions for the Denver Broncos, offensive coordinator in name only is Joe Lombardi, and I do think that's an important note, though, Coach, as a difference between what the Chargers expected of Joe and what the Broncos are going to expect of Joe. And I do think that is an important distinction. Whereas because Staley is such a defensive-minded coach and he is calling those defensive plays, he was really leaning on the offensive coordinator to be the entire offense as a result of kind of what his specialty is as a coach himself. Whereas Lombardi is more of a complement to Peyton as opposed to the offense, right? And that's, I think, a huge distinction between A and B. John Elway's no longer really in the building at all.
That's what I thought. I was like, huh?
He got some title.
All right.
I mean, there was
additional president of operations.
Yeah. So there was some really interesting things, just to kind of go back on John Elway. the original report was that Elway was no longer in the building, and then he was always in the building. And George Payton even said in one of his pressers the year after they claimed that Elway was gone, that he and Elway were literally talking almost on a daily basis about direction and what to do. It wasn't until the year after that, which was effectively when ownership changed, when Elway was kind of no longer really in the building and really didn't have that same kind of level of power and that sort of thing. So it was presented as a not quite truthful statement that Elway was no longer really doing much with the Broncos, and it was about a full year delayed. And I think now we're starting to finally see a bit of a culture shift a little bit within the Broncos, especially now with Sean Payton coming into the building. Going back to our defensive coordinator is Vance Joseph, who, look, as much as I think that he's actually done some really good things in Arizona with their defense, given the what they had and everything, I still cannot get his head coach pressers and his taglines out of my head as a Broncos fan. And every time I hear his name, the only words that I think of is, "We had a great day at practice." Because that was quite literally every presser that he was in front of the press after practice every day. I really do wish him all the best, and I hope that he is given the freedom in order to run his defense the way that he wants to run it. The one thing that I really disliked about the Elway era is that there was consistent and persistent rumors that Elway just wouldn't get his hands out of the cookie jar, so to speak, and that he kept on trying to influence all aspects of the team.
Kept drafting QBs, man.
Yeah, exactly. And so I am all for you let your coaches coach. And if they were hired to do a job, if they can't coach and they fail, then they deserve to get fired. But it is not fair for you to meddle, impact their ability to do things their way, and then fire them. I disagree with that as a general premise. So I wish Vance Joseph all the best, and I really hope that he continues to succeed and hopefully excel with the Broncos when he joins us this year. And then we also have Ben Kotwicka, which I think is the correct pronunciation of his name, as our special teams coordinator. And he has got a really stellar record on special teams overall. And that's going to be a pleasant surprise for all of Broncos country, because we have had, we'll just say, not great special teams the last, 5-7 years. And that's been a huge detriment to us because we've actually lost several games as a result of them. I do want to delve into a couple other kind of high-level coaches here, and that is Zach Strief as our offensive line coach. He is a former player that played under Sean Payton on the offensive line. I'm actually really interested to see how he does in that coaching role. And we also have Davis Webb, Davis Webb as our quarterbacks coach.
Younger than Russ.
Which is, that was a comment and something that was mentioned on the 5280 podcast on MHRT Network, which aired last night. And they made some really interesting comments, which I think are important to note. And that is Russ's former quarterback coach that he had as a private coach was also younger than him. So
I read the thing that it seems like from what Davis Webb's going to be the next offensive guru in terms of how he prepped as being a backup.
Right, and I think it's important to also look at what Davis Webb has done with other quarterbacks that have kind of worked in a mentorship role where he has been their mentor in the NFL, and every single one of them has succeeded in the last 2 iterations that he's been in that mentorship role. So I think it's an important thing to look at in terms of what he's done. And typically,
didn't Payton say he was highly recommended by Daboll and Eli Manning?
Yeah. And ultimately, when you look at a guy like Webb, he's that perfect coaching mold. He was clearly an intelligent guy, a very, very bright guy, and knew what to do, but he didn't have the physical tools to actually do it himself. And those are often the best coaches, because in order for them to even meet the levels that they got to, they had to work so much harder than everyone else around them that they can actually transfer that over to somebody else who has the physical gifts and tools that they were never blessed with. So I think that's great. I really do. I think that's absolutely spectacular. And guys like Josh Allen, who has an arm that can throw a country mile, having a guy that had to learn footwork because he can't throw the ball a country mile, and then have him train him and other quarterbacks like that. I think having a guy like Webb is exactly what you want in a quarterback's coach for a team, is a guy that knows what he needs to do in order to succeed and can hopefully transfer that over to someone else. I also want to call out our strength and conditioning coach. We parted ways, moved on from our strength and conditioning coach in Landau. I think that was a good move for us. We had tremendous amount of injuries the last several years. And coach, to tie off your point, I believe that 1 or 2 seasons of injuries on your team can be explained away by poor drafting. I think when you start getting into 3, 4, 5, and 6 years or more under the same strength and conditioning coach, I think at that point it's the coach's issue and not developing a proper off-season program, because at that point there, your GM ought to be fired, because that means your GM is drafting so poorly that they're only drafting injured guys. So I think that there is then at that stage an issue with strength and conditioning as opposed to just drafting.
Yeah, well, you also have those guys that come in, they weren't hurt at all in college, and for some reason they just keep getting injured in the pros. Like, is something weird or to that as well? Like, it's literally a dice roll. Like, I mean, you could probably bet better odds in Vegas on whether or not somebody's going to get hurt or not. Like, it's a weird game. I mean, it really is a weird game. You really don't know what you're getting until they really get into the league and how they play. And also it matters how they prepare in the off season, like what their regimen is like, what their eating habits are like. Like, prime example, Derwin James said in an interview before last season, I believe it was on the Pivot podcast, he said that with his injuries and his concerns in the last couple of years, he completely utterly changed his workout regimen and his diet.
Yeah.
So
you
and
think
that
too, like the best athletes get to the NFL, right? And some of them get there by just natural ability,
right?
And then figure out, oh shit, everyone else is like just as good as me, and then it's just a different game.
Right. So it really just depends. I mean, you really don't know exactly what you're going to get from a longevity perspective from a guy until he gets in, plays a few games, and you can see whether or not he's going to hold up. And that's why Sean Payton argued on I believe it was a sports radio talk show before he got hired for the Broncos. He said that, let's get out of the game in the first 10 picks of picking guys that are small, because you don't want to have a guy that's small, in the top 10, because you're going to add that as an issue with it being a detriment to his being durable. Whether or not he's going to be
the first pick.
Yeah, right. So if Bryce Young goes first, they're going to sign up for that as well. They're going to be concerned whether or not he's going to be able to hold up into NFL game in the NFL game.
And it's like Sean Payton kind of made his whole career on a small QB.
I know, right? Well, I would argue Drew Brees is an anomaly though. Like he's not normal small guy. Like, but I think Kyler Murray only makes it in the league right now because he's athletic ability. If he was an immobile quarterback, he would be gone already. He wouldn't have got that. He wouldn't got that secondary though. He wouldn't have got it. He got a cannon for an arm and he can run. If that wasn't the case, then he would not be in the league at this moment. So I think that if you're a guy that can't have, you don't have elite athletic ability, elite arm, and you're small, it's a question mark whether or not I want to draft you high. I might draft you, but it might not be high. It just is what it is.
Well, that holds true for a bunch of the smaller guys. Look at Wes Welker. Look at a ton of these
Darren Sproles.
Yeah, look at Sproles. Look at these other smaller, shifty guys, where the GMs all had that as a general mentality, which is, are willing to take a flyer, but I'm not willing to draft you and waste higher capital because I'm concerned that you may not make it.
Yeah.
I mean, even Philip Lindsay fell into that draft mold when he was brought in as a UDFA to Denver, where he was an undersized, quick running back, despite his college stats being spectacular.
It was just
never
a risk that they weren't willing to take.
And it never was really hurt in college, but then he had 2 good years with you guys, and all of a sudden, he got hurt one good time, and it just was a downward spiral.
Mhm.
Yeah. So
Yeah, and I mean, even Eckler on your team.
yeah, I'm thank God that we got 2 running backs behind him, and we didn't have to utilize him. Well, on top of the fact that Lombardi refused to run the ball, but utilizing him less, throughout the season. You don't burn a 200-pound running back down to the rotors and expecting them to be productive and come week 15. Then that's something that's going to bode well for you. If you keep him healthy, and you run other guys, like I said, use them as a committee. There's no bell cow in LA. You have to use them guys by committee. So if you do that, then you will likely hold up better and have them, available towards the end of the season.
So, Captain, that's the Broncos in a kind of broad nutshell in terms of what we brought in as coaches. We have a few other coaches, obviously, that were brought in. We had a few other coaches that were let go. Anyone who's really wanting to know more about the Broncos, I'm not going to try and tout it again, but yesterday's 5280 podcast, they really did go into some really great detail about each individual coach and what they bring to the table. I really do highly recommend watching that if you are a fan of the Broncos or simply just want to know a little bit more about each of them. We have too broad of a show and too many of us here to kind of really go into all the weeds for all of that. Captain, did you want to dig into any of the Raiders changes, or do you want me to throw over to Alex first?
Actually, I wanted to get because the Raiders actually did have some changes within the coaching staff along with the front office.
Yes.
Let's kick that one off first. The front office. God, I'm brain farting his name. The former running back, number 45, that was basically Mark Davis's pal over at basically was it the Hooters and PF Chang's. Crap. Damn it.
What happened?
Right, thank you, Marceau Reese. Thanks, Cool Kev. I was looking for it. I had it right on the tip, and then I old age CRS. Can't remember. Marceau Reese stepped aside, and he actually, he was kind of like, and he was like Mark Davis buddies, and he was like the director of. And his original job title was like director of fishy substances. I mean, he had a really unique, stupid job title that meant nothing, but they put it on him. And he was the vice president of player personnel, and now he's stepped away. Now, the fact that he stepped away now is one of those, because we've lost a lot of people in the front office. And it was, it was based on, there's some financial things going on, and they stepped away. And then there was things within, with the coaches. Obviously, it was like post Gruden, and they stepped away because this was like before the Gruden thing broke. People got out of the organization, and then people last year got out of the organization because there was some issues about money not being spent well. So that happened. So there's been a lot of fishy things going on within the Raiders front office. Okay. So the fact that he stepped away now, beyond the smoke alert, see where the fire is, because I find that very, very fishy that he stepped away as the player personnel director, because he was being groomed. And he stepped away now. So either there's something going on that we don't know about, which is probably what I'm thinking of, or, something behind the scenes, because to me, it just doesn't make sense. But we'll see. Sharif actually did say that he was close to Derek Carr. Hey, I'm great if you're close to Derek Carr, but you know what? You got a cushy job, and you step away. That doesn't add up, just because you're bored.
Or they told him to step away, or they'll take it away.
No. Like I said, there's something going on, and bad joke, but I'm just saying that to me, there's something going on there, and we will see. And that's as far as the front office position. I'm available, by the way, to take the spot. Remember, I'm going to be the quarterback this year as well, and the defensive tackle. I can also be the vice president of player personnel, and I'll be there at halftime before game.
You'd be like Burt Reynolds in Longest Yard, huh? Coach, work on the coach, get one hand off.
I'll do everything, man. But so let me know, Mark, or actually Miss Davis, because I said I did meet Carol before and she liked me. So maybe she'll remember that I'm needing of a job. And actually, Ed said that they were going to fire him, but they let him go on his own terms. That I can see, because again, if you're,
what I said.
It's always better to say, "Well, I resigned because I wanted to spend more time with my family," or "I resigned because there was something else going on." I resigned because I didn't want people to know about the fact that I was, banging some of the chicks in the front office, and that's
They caught me doing lines on my desk. And you're gonna resign, and you're fired.
I had a couple. I was doing lines off of Cocor,
Wow.
and whatever. But
Hooker, which is who they're drafting. So
You're right. You're right.
I'll Hooker. But we'll see.
I mean, I heard it was naked sushi and a cheerleader, but whatever.
Oh man.
Yeah, I know that. Anyway, that's for the front office. One other thing, two other things I wanted to go to, and actually, the Raiders did hire a assistant special teams coach, a gentleman by the name of Darius Swinton II. So, Coach, what can you tell me about Darius Swinton II?
I heard that name before. That name sounds familiar.
Yeah, because he used to be one of either your assistant special teams coach or maybe a assistant. He was one of your coaches because he was.
I think he was just an assistant. But like I said, it's hard to say in regards to what he was doing, and because he didn't have a official title. I mean, maybe he was helping out special teams, maybe he wasn't, because we have a incumbent assistant and a head special teams guy, and Ryan Ficken is our head special teams guy. So I don't really have a whole lot of details on whether or not he's good or not. But if he was part of that staff before Ryan Ficken got there, and he was doing special teams, it was horrific, to say the least. The special teams was one of the things that Brandon Staley had to clean up when he got here, because it was not good holistically. So we had a lot of woes when it came down to special teams prior to Staley getting the job. So if he's part of that problem, good luck. But
yeah, well, I was going to say, actually, our special teams guy was actually the former Donkey special teams guy, and he sucked there. So I guess we're picking up the dregs of all the guys within our division. So
passing them around.
Yeah, but the one thing that I'm really happy to hear about is that the former Ravens outside linebacker coach, outside linebacker coach Rob Leonard, who was with the Ravens as one of their coaches, he is now our new defensive line coach, and I like that hire a lot.
Reeves comments are good. They're gold.
With Rob Ryan being one of our the defensive assistants, I think that he had a hand in that, because again, what he used to do, because Rob Ryan used to be like the linebackers guy, so he was looking for that. The guy who, while he was with the Giants, so there's the connection as well. So he knows Graham, and Graham knows him, but his guys along the defensive line was they improved dramatically the very next year that he was there. So he improved the outside linebackers, he improved the defensive line because he was an assistant there, and now he is our line coach on the defense. Frank Oakham was, I don't want to say that he was scapegoated, but he really did not do a really good job with either pairing somebody on the opposite side of Max Crosby, because again, we signed Chandler Jones and he was on a milk carton for most of the year, but there wasn't
He,
a lot of.
he only rose from the dead when he stiff-armed Mac Jones.
Yeah.
That's it.
The Mac Jones stiff. But anyway, I do like the hire of Henry as our new D-line coach because we can only get better. Trust me on that. And the one thing I did want to say and this is something that I'm very, very proud of, is that according to a National Football League Players Association survey that they put out to all of the teams, the Raiders were ranked number 3 for best organization.
Facilities are brand new.
Overall, like how they treat the players, football facilities, staff, overall treatment. Let me see some of the other things. Locker room, training room and staff, travel, weight room, nutrition, and things along those lines. So they were ranked number 3 of 32. So that just means that and a lot of people were saying, hey, when they went over, like even to the Pro Bowl the last 2 years, they said, hey, we need to improve our facilities just like they have out in Vegas. So that's a positive thing that, if you are ranked that high, and by the way, the Vikings were first and Miami was second. If you're ranked that high, that's something that obviously is good for free agents in things that they consider, not just the organization, but what the organization brings to you and your family, because that's one of the things that was put out there. So that's one of the positives. 3 of 32, and I can tell you who the bottom. I think the Chargers were near the bottom, if not on the bottom.
In regards to what?
That the ranking of like the 32
facilities and treatment and all that stuff.
Yeah, I think that they were bottom 3 of the 32, if I remember right. Oh, yeah,
Chiefs weren't bad either.
Yeah, the bottom 3 ranked 30 through 32 in order were the Chargers were 30th, the Cardinals were 31st, and the Washington Commanders were 32nd. There you go.
Well, we knew that.
So that's my record.
Speaking of the Commanders, there is rumors that there is a vote going on. There's a vote going on, and I don't know if it's completed yet, that the owners were voting on whether or not to force the sale of the Commanders team.
Well, have you seen all this with Snyder, like what he's been doing with his money and how he's like fraudulently getting millions from the team? Loaning his stuff, and it's crazy. He's been coming out.
Oh my goodness! I have a lot of things to say. None of them are going to be.
It's be Jeff Bezos. It's going to be the Washingtons.
No, they said he couldn't buy a team.
That's what Dan Snyder said. But once they get him out, that's where it's going.
Regardless, there's a lot of things I have to say about Dan Snyder, and none of them are suitable for air. So we just going to leave it at that.
He charged the commander like $4.5 million to put the logo on his own head. Like that's how he was taking money from him.
Yeah, but if Bezos buys the Commanders, he's going to change the logo to the penis, space jet thing, right? So, I mean, that's just
what?
Yeah. The Bezos spacecraft thing that he had was we'll just call it oddly shaped.
Yeah, it was definitely oddly shaped. Yes.
We'll leave that at that.
It's kind of like the front end of the Rams logo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So and then of course then he came out of it with his shaved bald head, which is just hilarious. But it's one of those things where, I mean, Bezos makes a ton of sense to own a team given the amount of financial capital he brings into the league. But I think that the league would do themselves well to maybe clear room for him, because I think he would make for a reasonably good owner just because he's got obviously the business savviness and whatnot. Alex, over to you, I guess, with regards to the Chiefs, your coaches, any changes and whether or not you think, there's going to be major issues.
Is this audio better
Yes.
or no? It is?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Then maybe it was my mic. So
Okay.
we tried that. But yeah, what were you saying? Sorry.
Well, you've obviously had a coaching change, clearly, given the fact that one of your coaches opted to go to the 32nd ranked team in the league as the offensive coordinator. What do you think of any of your changes there in terms of what might transpire and what changes you might see?
Yeah. Obviously we had Bieniemy take a similar role, but a little better title to go to the Commanders. I don't agree with him having to make that move, but certainly understand why he had to. Don't really understand why he had to do it, but I get him doing that to hopefully get to becoming a head coach sooner, because it's, in my opinion, absolutely wild that he's not a head coach now. Especially with the success that the Chiefs have had and he's had, frankly, as the offensive coordinator, especially considering, every other coordinator. I think Coach and I have talked about this a few times, but, every other coordinator that Bieniemy has faced in the playoffs has gone on to be a head coach, or in the Super Bowl has gone on to be a head coach. Both Eagles coordinators got head coach jobs the next day.
And they lost the Super Bowl.
Yeah. It's unfortunate that he had to go, but I get him making that move, and he's the assistant head coach. So I imagine more responsibility and kind of get under the stigma of Andy Reid's doing it all, not the enemy.
That's it. That's it right there, Alex, is that
I know that's it, but
NFL has been saying that it's he's basically not doing the job, and all he's doing.
I get why they say that, but you go look at other coaches that got head coach jobs and came from similar roles.
Let's just cut the malarkey, okay? You had a special teams coach get hired as a head coach.
Yeah.
This man has 2 Super Bowls. He has probably the best generational quarterback we've seen in the last 10 years. He's under his direct tutelage for the last 5 years. He's been to 5 consecutive AFC title games. Nobody that's got hired in the last 5 years as a coach has anywhere close to those level of accolades as an OC or position coach. So there's no excuse for him not being a head coach at this point.
Actually, the one other rub on Bieniemy was his.
Don't say interview skills. Don't say it. Don't say interview skills.
He's an asshole, according to LaShawn McCoy.
I'm just saying, Coach. I'm not downgrading. I'm just saying that he was Andy Reid's puppet and his charges while at the University of Colorado. And I won't even go there. But that was the big strike 1, strike 2 against Eric Bieniemy, and that was thrown about, bandied about in the press from everybody that said we had Eric Bieniemy in for an interview, and he was never hired. That's the last 5 years, Coach. So maybe now that he's gone away to be the assistant head coach OC with the Commanders, he'll be able to step away from both. Okay.
Yeah.
He'll be out of Andy Reid's shadow.
I get why, but
necessarily throw that
at
out.
the same time, you got a guy who's had consistently the number 1 or number 2 offense. He's been the coordinator for the number 1 or number 2 highest scoring and productive offense in the NFL the last 5 years. And he has to take the same title, albeit while also being assistant head coach, to go to the worst offense and worst franchise and be successcul just so someone else will let him be a head coach.
Alex, I'm not Bieniemy. You take it that I'm crapping on Bieniemy. I think he should have had an option.
No, we're not. Nobody's crapping on Bieniemy. We're crapping on the ownership decisions. That's what we're crapping on. We're crapping on the ownership decisions. It has nothing to do with Bieniemy and his ability to do a job. It's the owner's decision making is what we're crapping on. That's the issue. It's not about Bieniemy at all. It's about the owner's decision making.
What I'm saying is, I was just, for those that didn't know, those were what was stated for year after year after year, because there are some that don't know.
Hell, Sirianni was the quarterbacks coach, wasn't he?
Yeah.
But
Right.
I mean, no, it's just wild. I didn't mean to get into that talking about the changes, but it is the unfortunate nature of the change, right?
It's going to come up because he's gone now. It's going to come up. It was an inevitable discussion to have, in all honesty.
Yeah.
But I definitely say that it's not necessary. It's an issue where they keep moving the goalposts for Eric Bieniemy, but people with less, I guess you can say experience in the league. We use the word experience.
Less of a resume.
Less of a resume in the league. You don't even question whether or not they can have a job or not.
I agree. So you guys are snipping at me like I don't like Eric Bieniemy. Okay.
No, it's just the whole narrative that people can try to feed you. It's not that. It's not that. It's not when they qualify that. Because if you put a blind resume up, you put no name on the paper with Eric Bieniemy's accolades and Shane Steichen, Jonathan Gannon, or anybody that's got hired in this cycle, it doesn't compare. Like you would go with Eric Bieniemy 10 times out of 10, blind resume. But when you put faces to the paper and names the paper, all of a sudden it changes. That's my whole issue.
Yeah. And yeah, like Sharif said, Matt Nagy got a job from the same position, same coach went to Chicago.
And remember I said this, I promise you, if the Chiefs do well again this year, go deep into the playoffs or go to the Super Bowl again, and Nagy's OC, bet money he gets the head coaching job.
Which leads me into who they did hire.
Matt Nagy.
Is Matt Nagy. They have brought him back to fill in Bieniemy's departure. So that's really the only change that the Chiefs did make, but it's really not a change because he was the OC, albeit not with Mahomes, and then went to Chicago and but I mean had similar offensive productivity in terms of when they had Alex Smith and he was OC, and I mean they did similar stuff. I granted the playbooks opened up more now that they have a Mahomes, so honestly I'm kind of interested to see how different it'll look. Obviously Reed's going to still have his fingers on what the script will be and what they run, but I mean I think Nagy at least had some sort of power in the offense when he was there the first time. So I think it'll be interesting to see how much it'll change, not from only when Nagy was the OC, but also even from last year, because it kind of give you a little insight, at least as I'm thinking of how the coaches worked with each other in terms of who got to call what or who kind of had the scheme stuff. I mean, to me, if it comes out and it's the exact same, then it's Reed. But if it's somehow a little different, then it's not just Reed, and and he's given his OC guys chances to do stuff. But outside of that's the only change that happened in the coaching staff. So I mean, at least kept it pretty consistent. But it's also wild that you think of as the Chiefs are a team that won the Super Bowl twice in 5 years, and they kept their coaching staff almost 100% intact after winning a Super Bowl. So interesting. I guess optics that people have who work under Andy Reid versus other franchises. But as a Chiefs fan, not upset that they are keeping their staff in house and keeping everyone in and kind of get to run it back, I guess, with the coaching staff for next year.
I also wonder if, to your point with what's happening is Andy Reid has traditionally done and been known for two things. One, not giving a crap about the defense at all. Like, I mean, at all. Like, just, it's almost seems to be like, but, you talk about some of the narratives that are kind of surrounding Andy Reid and what he's done over the course of his tenure in the NFL. And basically there seems to be a common thing. One, he's the guy calling the plays no matter what, generally speaking. And two, he does not give a crap about the defense, and he's basically, I simply just want to score more points than you. Right? Like that seems to be like
the best defense is a good offense. Is his
philosophy. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
But they've won the Super Bowl twice with the defense ranked, I think, lower than 20 in the league. So
right.
I mean, it works.
Well, I will say to Spagnola's credit, now I wouldn't give him, the ilk of a Fangio or of Evero for that matter from a holistic schematic perspective, but he definitely is good situationally. Like schematically,
because he just blitzes. He just blitzes the hell out of people.
He blitzes in the right manner. He does it in a timely manner. Like he's a timely play calling coach when it comes to defensive pressures and things of that nature. He knows when to get after you. He's a bend but don't break. He's a bend but don't break guy for the most part. But then when he needs to get a stop, he goes and gets a stop, and that's where you leave it at.
Right. Yeah. He is opportunistic in when he calls.
The only thing I don't like about Spags is he has a very specific frame for each position of what he wants his players to look like, and he will not consider any prospects that don't fit in his frame.
Right. You got to be a certain height, certain weight. I
get someone that. Like Aaron Donald, right? Like a 6 foot, 280. Just defensive tackle that killed the combine. Spags would be like, no, because he's not 6'4".
Right, he's not 6'4", he's not 320.
He wants his corners and secondary guys to be like 6'1", 6'2", and I think sometimes that kind of impacts the way they build the defense, and then you're stuck with like your Daniel Sorensen's, playing a pivotal role because they fit Spags. It's like dream of what a safety or nickel back should look like. So, I mean, there was a lot of talks, honestly. I mean, they said it with Reed, too, that perhaps Reed or Spags or both would retire after this year. And I was kind of hoping that Spags would, just to kind of get some new blood.
New blood in the building, yeah. Right.
But at the same time, I mean, he did a hell of a job for having a lot of rookies, let alone a lot of rookies in the secondary. And, that's
the flip side of that same coin.
Yeah.
Right. So you got a guy who's kind of stuck in his ways, and there's some issues, like you said, won't take a flyer on a guy like an Aaron Donald, who may end up being, one of the best D tackles we've seen in a generation. Won't take a flyer on some other guys that don't fit that mold, right? But then what's the flip side of that same coin? Well,
civil litigation, Ed.
He's an ambulance chaser.
No, I defend the people getting sued.
Yeah, but
Alex, put someone in an ambulance. That's what I do.
But Alex, on the other side of Spags, he's a stable, steady coach. So when you have a young rookie that's coming in who doesn't know anything, he's just going to pull him aside and coach him up like nobody's business because there's nothing he hasn't seen.
No, yeah, I mean, you can't deny he's a good coach, at least in terms of player development and things like that. I just, it's crazy how successful the Chiefs have been able to be with how bad their defensive unit ranks at the end of every year. And like you said, I mean, scoring more points and getting in those track meets has been a model that works for them. But I mean, at some point, someone's going to find the model that catches up to that, right? And I mean, at the end of the day, it's always going to revert back to defense, wins the championships. It's like, at least in terms of sustained success and keeping it going. So that was the only thing I just was kind of, I guess, wishing that we might be able to shake things up on defense, but also hard to say to do that when you
just won a Super Bowl.
Right. Yeah, won a Super Bowl and have a bunch of secondary players that were fifth round later picks that were major contributors. So
if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I guess that's how they feel.
I was curious too if Spags would get some sort of looks at a head coach job, just because he's the DC.
You know what? His name haven't even been brought up, which is ironic.
But I mean, he was the Eagles coach, right? Or where was our Giants? Or
I thought.
No, Spagnuolo was the Giants' defensive coordinator when they beat the Patriots.
That's
both
it.
times.
That's
he was the head coach of someone though, and he ran it to the ground. Right?
Burn it down.
Yeah,
Burn it down.
He did. He did not do good.
Yeah, but I guess a defense wins championships unless you have Andy Reid.
Yeah, I mean, right? It's crazy to think, but at the same time, for how the Chiefs defense, like you said, he Spags and gets that unit right when they need to be. I mean, for as bad as they were ranked, they were still second in the league in sacks, and it seemed like really turned it on, in the postseason, and always were getting sacks when they needed them and getting stops when they needed to get stops. So,
the St.
like
Louis
you said,
Rams.
Yeah, okay, that's right. He was
Right after
I
the
should have known that.
Right after the
I should have
Giants'
for sure known
second
that.
Super Bowl, he was the Rams head coach.
And then
There
they
you
brought
go.
in Jeff Fisher to really fix it, and then they moved.
Right, yeah. Good luck with that.
Actually, I probably went to like a good chunk of Spags' head coaching games in St. Louis too, and I didn't even remember. I thought it was the Eagles. I don't know why.
Yeah.
I think he was the DC of the Eagles. Now that I say that.
Yeah, we gotta look up
Whatever.
Spags' history. See how many places he's bounced around to. He's been around a while.
I mean, oh yeah. Well, those guys, it's weird once you get in that NFL circle, you're kind of in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he was Eagles, Giants, head coach of the Rams. Then he went to the Saints, Ravens, back to the Giants, and then to the Chiefs.
See, there it is.
There we go.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. He's 63 years old. He's
Yeah.
63.
Yeah. So that's a really. I just think that overall we seem to have rounded out everything on our coaching staff, and guys, the reason why we wanted to go into that on today's show is because as much as a lot of other shows won't admit it, your coaches are going to actually play a massive role in terms of who you're going to actually be looking at in this upcoming draft. So many of these other shows and these other podcasts and stuff like that out there, basically as of the day after the Super Bowl, start throwing out mock drafts. And and me personally, I laugh every time I see that, because if you don't have a defensive coordinator, I can assure you that you're not drafting the dude that you think you're going to draft until you get your defensive coordinator. I'm sorry, the answer is just no. Okay, it's just no.
The insanity by which people mock draft on Twitter is laughable to me.
Everyone loves to do a good mock, man, myself included. So.
I do, but I think I look at it from a need
but I like to
and
do
coaching
fantasy
mind
mock.
versus fantasy mock is no different ballgame. That's something different. But we're talking about actual NFL mock drafts, like PFF.com. People load up that mock draft engine simulator, and they do it 10,000 times between the end of the season to April, and it's never close to right.
There's one Chiefs guy I follow that I think he puts out 5 a day. He's like, new scenario,
right? Traded
Orlando Brown, signed this kid. It's just random people. It'd be like,
what?
Picked up Charles Cross from Seattle, and I'm like,
what?
Okay, okay, it's just a multiverse,
It really is. That's a good way to call it. Definitely a multiverse. They come to mock drafts.
Yeah,
well, that's they call that the shotgun approach, because at some point one of those little pellets is going to hit something approximating what actually happens, and then they can go back and be like,
well, that's what it is.
On April 15th, I was dead right, my man. See, look.
Who cares if you had 1,000 tweets of mocks? If you just had one that had one,
it's like the lottery. One out of 1,000. I scored. I played the lottery 1,000 times. I hit one.
Yeah. I do agree though that I do the PFF, but I think their rankings are a little skewed, because I'll do one. I'll be like, no way, this guy would be here in the 3rd round.
Right.
Just like but
So
people love the draft season.
I guess with that in mind, I think that we're still seeing some of the combine stuff come out. Perhaps I think what an interesting piece is, now that we know who our coaches are, who do we all think, now that we kind of see the rounding out of the coaches from a positional group perspective, with your team's first pick in the draft, what do you think is their target or ideal position group that they would be going after?
Who goes first?
I'm going to throw over to Alex first to see what he thinks.
Boom. Yeah. No, so kind of allow me to answer DZ's question. That was a little earlier on whether I think the Chiefs will go heavy on defense or not. Obviously picking at the very end of the first round, be pick 31 this year, which is a little odd, but thanks to the Dolphins.
Yeah, how did that happen?
The Dolphins, man, they're tampering with Brady.
Oh well, yeah. Everybody moves up one because they
Yeah.
lost their pick. That's right.
Just yeah. So you know, I think a large part when they're in that position, I think they'll come one you kind of pick for luxury, I guess, depending on where their second pick is. But they have a lot of draft capital, so I imagine if someone falls, they'll probably try to make a move for someone they really love. But I really think a big indicator of what they're going to do is who they re-sign in terms of the offensive free agents. Because if they don't bring back a Juju or Hardman, I mean, I know Andy Reid said his combine thing, you know, Tony and Sky Moore are going to be a lot more heavily involved, which would tell me that they're not signing one of those guys. My guess would be Hardman, but if they can't work out the right, you know, money with Juju, then I don't think you see them bring either one back, and that kind of opens the door for if one of these wide receivers kind of drops a little bit, they make a move up a few spots, or maybe one of them falls to it. See them at 31. Otherwise, I think you see them probably take the best edge rusher available because that's good. You know what they need outside of interior linemen. They're pretty thin in terms of depth and young talent outside of Karlaftis in terms of pass rush. So, you know, I hope they don't pick for luxury like they did with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. You know, they kind of took that pick because Mahomes said he wanted him. And I mean, yeah, at the time, the dude was like a stellar pass catching back that, you know, wasn't used all that much at LSU, or, you know, was, but not like crazy. And then he got hurt, you know, 3 times in 2 years and just never been the same guy. You know, but I hope that they kind of learn from their mistake of doing that. At least, you know, they had to get rid of Tyreek to get some draft capital back to, you know, build a better roster. So I'm hopeful that they, you know, don't make that mistake twice. But I imagine them targeting edge rusher. You know, there's that guy from LSU. I don't know how to say his name, but his brother played at Georgia. You know, like that. He's been mocked there. That Forkey from Notre Dame. I mean, there are a lot of edge rushers in this. There are a lot of receivers and a lot of edge rushers, in my opinion, in this draft class. So
yeah, hurt his deep at corner too.
Yeah. So I mean, so far Veach and Reed, and really any of them have, or any of the Chiefs front office have, at least recent drafts, shown a pretty good skill set to find guys and major contributors late. So that's what I'm more excited to see as this kind of plays on. You know, who they kind of target later, because you know Veach likes to find his guys at the Senior Bowl and falls in love with them, like Pacheco. You know, he saw Pacheco at the Senior Bowl, and I think he talked about in his conference, like, this is the only dude out here that is trying hard and like looks like he just hates like the ball when he's running, you know. And then he's like never left his mind. Took him the 7th round, and look what happened. So it'll be interesting to see how that kind of plays out as more of the scouting part goes. But yeah, I would love for Hyatt to fall to KC though. DZ, we'll see if that happens.
I said it last week.
Him or Addison.
Listen, if he falls,
I also
to y'all,
like Trey Palmer from Nebraska, but that's way later.
Listen, my PTO was already in because I want to need some time. If y'all get Hyatt and we don't, I'm
they're gonna take Robinson. Like again, you know, that'll be what they do or something.
Oh well, Bijan, no. Me and Tom Telesco will have words outside of the facility if he does that.
Yeah. No, I think that the Chiefs take him.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I'll be the one to get him, right?
So I think that's an interesting take. So you're thinking edge or wide receiver, depending on kind of who you sign and who you don't. And we're going to start getting into some of that information as that information comes out. Captain, your thoughts on the Raiders? I have one thing to throw in, just as my point. You and I have spoken about him a couple times. Your interior D-line, since you've lost, I can't remember the guy's name now from 2 seasons ago. Filon. Yeah, well, it's a French name, so I pronounce it Filon. But
Philly DZ, that's my guess.
So you guys have really missed someone like him on your team, and typically the best interior D tackles have to be taken in that early midsection there of the first round, which is about where you guys are picking. You're picking 7th, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, we're picking 7. And by the way, Pinon, I deliberately left that up to you so we can hear their French enchantment of Darius Pinon. You know, you don't even say the N on the name; it just kind of like lingers out after the Pinon.
Yeah.
He was actually he's
gone.
It was the ACL in the very last game against the Chargers, and so he was working to come back. And as far as I know, nobody signed him this past year because we were looking at him to come back, but I thought he was still out there. So it's quite possible that he will be out again, available. We liked him, but that was under the Satya organization. I don't know whether McDaniel or McZiggy, is about the best way to say it, would like to. I'd love to have him back because the guy just had a motor that wouldn't quit, and he was a stuffer and a guy that can get after the quarterback. So I'd love to have him. I'd love to have him back. But again, let's see where he is on his. And like I said, it'll be a full year plus. And again, I don't believe he signed with anybody at the end because I would normally see it on some of the.
Well, and he still got Tillery too, so let's not forget.
Yeah, well, Tillery is a free agent, and he might
bring him back.
We'll see.
Sounds a long-term deal.
Aside from a crap call,
5 years, $50 million.
Fully guaranteed.
Fully guaranteed. 5 years, $50 million.
No,
fully guaranteed.
No, maybe 5 years, $5. You know, guaranteed.
To get blown off the ball every snap.
Yeah, $5 and unlimited Subway. That's what he'll get.
Right.
That's not even good.
And they not even foot longs. Only get half sandwiches.
Yeah, because the 6-inch cold cut.
Right. No warm sandwich. No warm sandwich for you.
Aside from that stupid penalty, he played his ass off in the games that he did play with the Raiders. So we actually utilized him well.
You know, I just deleted him too. I had like 5 clips on my phone of him getting blown off the ball in the run game, and I forgot to send them to you if I deleted them. Damn it.
Anyway, but getting back to point, the Raiders have been looking at edge, and with the news today that Carter out of Georgia was there are issues there, and people are already saying, "There you go, Raiders are getting a guy with some issues." First off, we'll see what happens. And again, I'm not smacking on the guy. I'm just saying, per the news, that that there are issues with the kid Carter, who is probably was a top 1 to 4 in this draft.
For sure, yeah. Wasn't making it past 3.
Yeah, so he was he was 1 to 4, and somebody's going to grab him now with the issues. We'll see.
What did they say? He was racing. They were like street racing.
Yeah, he was street racing, and at
the end of the day, the other driver was drunk. His BAC was like 0.19.
And
it was a lady.
Were killed.
It was a lady. It was the lady recruiter. Yes.
The lady.
She was the one driving, or the other?
She was the one driving. The offensive line was in the back seat.
Yeah, she was going 104. The O lineman was in the car with her, and they were both dead.
Yeah. Crazy.
Which is
big time. Like 2 times the legal limit.
Yeah. See, I don't see how they could really give him any liability to that. Any criminal liability.
According to his tweet, he said the charges were misdemeanor charges.
For
street racing and illegal turns in a road, but it was nothing. They're not trying to tie him to the killings at all. It's just the fact that.
I know, but it just seems interesting that seems like it's from people like in the area that are drivers. So I'm curious if they have some sort of traffic cam.
Well, they do. That's how they implicated his car. They do. That's why they charged him today, because his car was seen at the scene.
Okay. I mean, either way, it's misdemeanor, so it's really not going to affect anything.
It shouldn't.
But it's community service.
But somebody going to mess around and get a steal, because if you don't go in top 5 based upon those reports, with like 10 to 15, yeah, there you go. Prime
Like
example.
Tunsil dropped 10 spots because
He
he's
did.
ripping a bong on his
Right.
Instagram.
Right. Right.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, unless you do a Jeremy Tunsil.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But so that's one thing. But the point with the Raiders, they're looking at edge. Although, like I said, I really would like to get somebody. You know, give me the best guy in the middle that's going to push, or give me another guy on the other side of Crosby. We're looking at like Tyree Wilson, kid out of Texas Tech, I believe he looks fantastic.
That's curious, Cap. You think they value edge more so than O-line in this draft?
Our quarterback.
For the
obvious.
first pick,
yes. Really?
For the first pick, yeah. I think that they value edge because they need to build the D, and they're gonna go.
That's what
heavy
she
on
said.
What did I miss?
You said build the D, and I said that's what
You
she
got to
said.
build the D.
Yeah, okay, whatever. They're gonna build the D up, heavy on the, like I said, edge,
Yeah,
defensive
you need to get
tackle.
bigger and taller, right?
No clue.
Yeah.
You guys will have to tell me after the show. I'm missing it. Anyway, the other position
Build the D up.
for like in the second round, it was linebacker. They're looking at Sewell out of like Oregon, I think.
Uh-huh.
And also Henry To'o out of Alabama. And they have spoken with Hooker. I mean, obviously, you know.
I mean, you got to speak to the hooker. You got to speak to the hooker now.
They have
Speak to the hooker to build the D up.
Gotten with Hooker there as well.
There you go.
The one thing, and again, this, and I loved Hooker. Well, I do love Hooker, but anyway, I loved Hooker in college, more ways than one. But the one thing that I was taken aback by, and it made me think, and I might have said this already, is Hooker's offense at Tennessee is a hypo offense, which is very quick, RPO. I mean, it was quick hitters, and Tennessee had one of the best teams, not Georgia, in the league. Okay. And they had a lot of people. That's why they were so good this year. And then so when you have a quick hypo offense, the question will be, will he be able to get into and be able to dissect and do all the things that you want in a McDaniels offense, which is so complicated? Even Devontae Adams was saying how complicated that offense is. Okay.
Yeah.
At Amelia Earhart offense.
Fairbanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Amelia Earhart. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fairbanks offense.
Okay.
Yeah.
Carlton Banks offense.
Yeah. Carl Banks.
Carl Banks.
There you go, Cap.
And I still owe a dance because I can't dance because the Chiefs didn't lose. But anyway, so I still owe a dance. But yeah, that offense is very, very complicated. So it's going to be, and that's one of the reasons why I'm sure that they took him in for an interview. They want to pick his brain to see if he can actually be a legitimate starter there. One other thing that was going on was that they were looking at the throw percentages of what McDaniels normally does. McDaniels is not a throw it down the field. It's a quick hitter offense. And that's one thing where Hooker was actually ranked pretty high, along with Haney, the quarterback out of Fresno State. Not that we never had a quarterback out of Fresno. That ranked pretty high in their quick hitters and their percentages. So they were looking at, if you go by what his offense has been, you'd have to look at which quarterbacks that are coming out fit that mold. And Haney was one, Hooker was one. There's a couple more, but the guys that are bombers were not high on the list. Although AR-15 out of Florida, I think, was number 4 or 5. If you break it down like that, I really, really, really hope, and I know this sounds horrible, But I really, really, really hope that the Raiders don't draft Richardson. And if they do, then he'd better just bone up on how to get a good throw. Because said he's got an arm, he's got a cannon, he's got a howitzer. You just don't know where it's going.
He's a wild thing.
Catch it.
Got it from the California Penal League.
Get him some bifocals so he can throw accurately.
Yeah, well, might just be that. Hey, Wild Thing needed those spectacles on the show, and he started throwing in the strike zone. Maybe it's just that. I don't know.
Maybe get some contact.
Yeah, exactly.
Get him LASIK. Get us some LASIK.
Yeah.
How about that?
So
I want those glasses like Wild Thing had with the skull and crossbones in the.
Oh yeah, those are nice. Those are nice.
That would fit rather perfectly, I think, with your whole motif.
Exactly. If I can find them, I will get them.
Yeah.
I will get. In fact, now I'm gonna have to look up on eBay after this.
I was like, Google is your friend.
So
DM Charlie Sheen. He's probably got a whole room of them.
Yeah,
he probably does.
to quickly round out the show, guys, because we're running up on time here. I kind of see the Broncos in an interesting spot, and it really depends on if some of these trade rumors are true. I think that if we trade away a few players as a result of the combine discussions where GMs often have those kind of backdoor deals where they talk about, that's how Russell Wilson's trade, for example, to the Broncos was done. That's the Devontae Adams trade was also something that happened at the combine last year as well, where the details were kind of worked out there. So if the Broncos are able to trade and get capital in the first or second round or both, then my comment here changes. I'm going to assume that the Broncos are still then only left with the third round pick as their starting pick in the draft. If that's the case, I believe the Broncos are likely going to be targeting offensive center or offensive guard. And I think that the Broncos have seen our offensive line struggle mightily this past year. We had a bunch of injuries. I think Quinn Miners is certainly a guy that they're targeting to try to play and continue to play a more elevated role because he's a great run blocker and they want to have him continue to develop in the pass game. That being said, there are so many holes throughout the remainder of the offensive line. You have an aging quarterback, and the Broncos need to develop an identity. The Broncos, like the Cowboys, have always done better when they ran the ball well. And I think that the Broncos are going to need to start getting back to more of a run-first, throw-second style offense as Russell Wilson ages. And I think that we're going to start looking at offensive guard and offensive center within that third round pick, whichever is better between the two in terms of whoever's left on the board. And those are kind of the two positional groups. Again, staying true to what I said, I'm not going to get into specific individuals. I'm using those as positional groups as just like a generic thing. And the other side of the ball, if we kind of go in that direction, I could also see us flipping that and looking at interior defensive line. I know we have RichiRichEh, who we drafted last year, did not play much, but I really like him. And I think that hopefully with the second year under his belt, we'll start to see him take some leaps and steps forward. I think strength was a bit of an issue for him. I think he needed to come in and bulk up a little bit for the NFL. But I do think that maybe a D end or a D tackle may be another positional group that the Broncos may look at to further bolster our team. I think that's simply because we have a lot of free agents at both of those positions that we will likely not bring back. So, Coach, to your point, you need to retool and bring in cheap young talent to kind of backfill your roster, right? And I think that the Broncos are potentially in that position on the.
They really only have a third round pick right now.
Yeah.
Wow.
Or that's their highest pick. Like they only have one third rounder, or that's like the highest pick they have.
No, I think we have back-to-back third round picks.
Oh. Well, yeah, they do.
Yeah, we have back-to-back third round picks. Yeah.
The bold move, Cotton. Let's see how it works out for them.
I mean, surely they're gonna. I bet they got to make one or two moves to get some sort of later picks at the worst, but maybe they don't. I mean,
no, I mean, all the rumors right now in Broncos country, like we covered off last show, are are Garrett Bowles, Justin Simmons, tag and trade of maybe a Draymond Jones if he would truly like to go to another team, something like that. So those are all the rumors that were surrounding Broncos country in terms of
Judy, Jerry Judy.
Jerry Judy was another trade guy that might be traded. Those types of things in order to really try to get some first and second rounders across the board, and then draft replacements, for example, like rather than keeping Bowles, trade him away, maybe get a second, trade another guy away, maybe get a first and a second, and then draft a replacement left tackle rather than keep Bowles and have him come back after coming off the injury, sort of thing, right? So those are the other things that have kind of come up.
Oh, you found him, huh, Cap?
Yeah.
Nice.
Only $11.99.
Hey, man.
Well, actually, with tax and shipping, it was like 16.
Do it, man.
Not
Do
that
it.
bad. You need him.
I did.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say that should be the easiest purchase and decision you probably made in
a long
while.
time. There you go. There you
You're
go.
welcome. Now we're gonna have to put on that song whenever Capt gets on the show.
Wild
You
thing.
gotta turn around. Yeah.
Hey, well, I promise.
That damn song again.
I hate that effing song.
Right.
Yeah, but when I get them, I will wear them for the show.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. So, guys, that's going to do it for the show today.
Oh, you gonna leave me out? You gonna leave me out?
Yeah.
Oh, the Chargers are here.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Jeez.
Oh, man.
Yeah, he was about to too.
He really was about to push the button on me, wasn't he?
Yeah. And remember, only I can do the button prematurely, shall we say.
Well, yeah. You and your premature moves there, buddy.
I know. I left it right out. I saw.
I know you did. I know you did. I know you
I
did.
softballed it for you.
There you go.
Speaking of softballs, Coach.
Oh, well, nothing soft here, buddy. We play nothing but a hardball baseball around here.
There you go, baby. Throw on the heater, Ricky.
Yeah, forget about the curveball. Throw him the heater.
So,
But real quick, in regards to the Chargers, I mean, it's clear and cut for me, and what gives me pause about what they intend to do with the first round pick is what Tom Telesco had to say about Mike Williams today. Because for me, it's receiver and receiver only. It's not running back. It's not tight end. It's receiver and receiver only. Unless, that's what I told DZ earlier. I said, unless there's a highly, deeply, touted run on wide receivers earlier in the draft, like if 5 go off the board before we draft, then I can see us drafting a tight end maybe, because it's a highly talented tight end class coming in. But I believe in my heart that we can get a wide receiver in the first round and get a solid tight end in the second round, and we'll be fine. And those will be tied and linked to Herbert for the next 4 to 5 years, right? If not longer. But again, for my money, it's a receiver and receiver only. It's nothing but that. It's about having a deep threat weapon that Herbert can utilize, and it'll open up our offense. But what Tom Telesco had to say about it was he felt like he was comfortable with Mike Williams being the deep threat option when he doesn't run anywhere close to anything near a 4.3 or 4.4 40.
Yeah.
He's a long strider, yes,
but spooled.
Yeah, he's a 50-50 ball guy. He's not a guy that's going to, blow the top off a defense. You're not concerned about that when you play the Chargers in their scouting report. You're not. So you need a guy that can legit run a sub 4.3 40 and can take the top off a defense, and that's what you need to do. You find that in free agency, which is slim pickings. You maybe bring Jalen Guyton back, but I would argue that you bring Jalen Guyton back off ACL and wean him back slowly, and you draft the guy, and you got 2 able bodies that can take the top off. Because avoid of that, it's still going to be the status quo. You're still going to be limited in how you can call plays.
So, I guess on the flip side of that piece, though, is if there is an elite tight end that for whatever reason falls, just
Mayer,
Kincaid. Dalton Kincaid is a name.
What about that dude?
Yeah. So if you
Isn't
get
that
one of
Washington or
those
whatever,
guys,
Georgia.
The kid from Georgia, he's like 6'6", 6'7". Yeah, him too.
That's like
Him too.
Parham, though.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, he's tall, but he's not lanky like Parham. He got more muscle to him.
Yeah.
No. But my point is, if you get a guy like that, someone who is, basically in the 98th percentile in the key stats that you want for a tight end, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And the only wide receivers left, because there's been a run on them, are ones that are mediocre, and you'd be probably better off looking at late round flyer guys who are speed that are proven in, say, D1 schools and whatnot.
Right.
Would that not be better suited for you
Oh
guys?
yeah, absolutely. That's the scenario that the only thing it fits for me. But if Quentin Johnson's on the board, Jalen Hyatt, Zay Flowers, those names in particular, if they're on the board at 21, you pick them. You don't even guess about it.
Yeah,
you got to do it.
Johnson's there. You don't even think about that.
You don't even think about it. It's not even the question. You hand that card in ASAP. You don't even think about it. But if those guys aren't, if you're looking at a guy from Northern Oregon versus a solid D1 tight end, then you take the tight end. You get a D1, the guy from Northern Oregon in the 5th round, kind of deal. So I think that's the only issue that I see coming up, is that if everybody sees what we see and they just want to grab a receiver because all the guys that they wanted on their board are gone already. We had some type of shake up at the top of the board where the 1 gets traded, the 3 gets traded, the Raiders trade out. People you think are going to be there, and all of a sudden you have these run-on positional players early in the draft. Then you got to pivot your strategy. But if things fall the way they should, then you got to pick a wide receiver, and that's just it.
Fair enough. So basically, what you're saying is, if you have a speed receiver who's even halfway decent, and even one of the top tight ends, your pick would be you go receiver.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Yes, absolutely. Right. Because you got to look at it from the perspective. You have Gerald Everett on the roster for another year for sure. You already got a tight end that can play tight end 1. That's issue 1. 2, again, you can get a tight end in a later round that's serviceable. You can groom. It will be cheaper from a money perspective. And again, you look at it from a top end to lower end.
How many first round tight ends have even panned out? No,
exactly.
In all honesty,
my thought, Alex,
maybe Kyle Pitts.
Your name is not Kyle Pitts, Travis Kelce, or George Kittle.
Kelce was 3rd round.
Right, but my point is exactly unless you're those type of caliber guys, and that going in, you don't take a flower in them 1st round over a receiver. You just don't.
Yeah, fair enough. So
speaking of Kelce, he's hosting Saturday Night Live this weekend. Just thought I'd plug that.
Just so we know, right?
No.
Just make sure you check it out.
Well, Cap, we know you'll be asleep by then, so we don't got to worry about that.
Yeah.
The only thing that I like to watch on Saturday Night Live is Weekend Update.
Okay.
Yeah, he'll be doing that.
I will likely have more interesting plans this Saturday night that will not involve television. With regards to the show, ladies and gentlemen, that will actually do it for the show for this week's Wild Wild West podcast. We will have a lot more information that would have come from the Combine at that point for next week's show. And so I think now that we have our coaches kind of, flushed out here, I think next week we can start getting into more of these specific people and stats and numbers. Again, Coach, to your point, how fast is fast? What do those numbers look like at the,
but come Sunday, I'm going to have a list.
Yeah.
I was talking to my buddy. He was talking about, I think, was it Flowers ran a 4.3 at his pro day, and I was like, I feel like that's just the new 4.4 now. Like everyone does that.
Everybody got 4. Yeah,
who's got the 4.2?
Right. Yeah, the guy that runs 4.30 or under, then we're talking money.
Yeah, and it seems like now we're getting more and more of these guys that are able to get into that sub 4.3 or flirting with it now. Whereas before, if you ran that, it was just like breaking news.
If you ran that back in the day, you had a 1st round grade on you. I don't care what you did in college.
Oh yeah. You could be hurt all the time. It didn't matter. You were just that fast, right?
You're like John Ross, right, or Hayward Bay.
Yeah, I was just going to say Darius Hayward Bay, or name a wide receiver from the Raiders in the 90s.
Yeah, there we go.
All speed, all gas, no brakes.
But hey, if you had the fastest 40 time, you were a Raider.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Al Davis loves speed.
Yeah, it was a known fact, right? Yeah, it was a known fact. So anyways, guys, we will see you next week on the Wild Wild West. We're going to break down Combines players and who we think are going to fit based on our draft capital and draft fits based on those stats and numbers. I don't think we're going to be doing a draft mock, like a mock draft.
A little early for that.
It'll be more.
We definitely should, though.
It'll be more just positional players that kind of fit the types of things that we believe that our teams are going to require based on their combine stats and whatnot. And until next week, guys, where the West Side is the best side. Peace.
Yeah!